Good evening. This is Maestro with a Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today, we have a best of 5 series from Division B of the Elite League Season 6. This is the quarterfinals of the playoff bracket. Our first player will be Elefas, Open the Portal, otherwise known as Inekura, playing as the Eldar Warlock right here, a melee commander, can become a spellcaster as well. And his opponent will be Moomin, playing as the Techmarine, Space Marine ranged hero with a gun for every occasion and the ability to repair vehicles. So then, by now the Elite League is actually already pretty much kind of long since over, but you know, I'm only just now getting around to casting some of the actual playoff bracket matches. So, yeah, I mean, I just was pretty busy, and although this is, in a way, kind of old, especially for those people who really follow in closely and watch these matches when they were live streamed, it's kind of old stuff, but definitely a lot of people who have not seen it that way, and there are still definitely good matches to take a look at. So, I will just get to them in my own time. And we have our match here between Inekura and Moomin. Inekura, definitely, at this point, very much a community regular. Someone who I don't actually recall from previous years when I had cast many years ago, but certainly now I'm quite familiar with him. Seems like a pretty solid player to me, often featured in a lot of faction wars or 3v3 replays. As far as 1v1 goes, I've only seen him in Division B. I even wonder if at this point maybe he could kind of challenge himself and maybe try Division A and see how that goes. Moomin, meanwhile, is someone who I only saw him like a few months ago hanging out in Red Rupee's Twitch chat. So I did not know him as a player at all until he had entered the Elite League, and he actually seems to be doing pretty well for himself. Although Techmarine getting pretty close to dying right there as we actually get started on talking about the game itself. Meanwhile, scouts have been wiped out by the Howling Banshees. I think I caught that a little bit on the periphery of my screen. Certainly saw it a little bit in my peripheral vision. My god, these words are hard. Warlock will be tying up the Tactical Marines. That's a fight that at this point, I think the Tactical Marines might even be able to turn on him and might even be able to win in Force Melee, given that he does not have an upgraded weapon. So, but I would say, yeah, I still think he could have just turned and fought that. Eventually, though, the Warlock does get out of there, realize that he's, one way or another, he will not be winning that fight, whether it's Force Melee from the Tactical Marines or just supporting fire from the Scouts. Scouts themselves, however, will walk straight into the Guardian Weapon Team fire, and that will not go too well for them. So we are going to see the Guardian into Howling Banshee into the double Shuriken Cannon. This is a classic build. This build has been around for practically since the beginning of time. And it works pretty well with the general idea being that you are layering the suppression arcs of the two Guardian weapons teams so that even if you have an Assault Marine purchase, such as the one we see here, typically you want to try to get the Assault Marines to jump on your front Guardian weapon team so that the Assault Marines will get suppressed by the one in the back. This Guardian weapon team, however, going to get knocked over by some Shotgun Scouts, but is going to have to be a retreat from the Shotgun Scouts, so they're moving around a little bit too forward, and this is definitely kind of what we're looking for, but this also gives away the fact that it gives away the positioning of the second Guardian weapon team, which is why we see the immediate retreat from both. Not much chance of Moomin jumping on the first one, as the position of the back Guardian weapon team had already been revealed there. So it's kind of a net win for Moomin, despite getting his Shotgun Scouts forced off. Certainly going to give him a bit of the map as well, as he's got a 500 to roughly 400 victory point lead. And typically, part of the way this matchup works is that a lot of the Eldar units don't really want to be brute forcing their way against a lot of the Space Marine units. A lot of them will lose head-to-head. Certainly the Guardians versus any of the range units going to lose head-to-head. Guardians also going to lose if they're jumped on by Assault Marines. So definitely a big part of the idea here is using the Shuriken Cannons to kind of inflict the status effect of suppression. Shut down the range damage coming out of pretty much all of the range units, aside from, well, of course, the Assault Marines. But once again, we're going to see the Assault Marines. They have caught the initial Guardian weapon team. They'll jump on the second one. Second one will retreat. However, now the Assault Marines do have to worry a little bit about the Howling Banshees. Looks like they're going for the garrison of all places. They're losing so much health just trying to get in there. Lose a model just trying to get in there. Suppression from the Howling Banshees themselves proving to be quite threatening, but the follow-up damage from the Techmarine is enough to scare the Howling Banshees off of the field. So we see single shotgun. Obviously, at this point, we can only have a single shotgun given that there is no longer a second scout squad. Are we going to see... I think Inekura was attempting a foot grenade there. Oh, no! Oh, no! Oh, no. Inekura, I think that's a little bit of karma biting him. I think he was attempting a foot grenade to try to counter the Assault Marines, but the Guardians kept on getting knocked down by those special attacks, so they never actually were able to get the grenade off. And then eventually, since he kept on trying to get the grenade out, he was never pressing the retreat button, and then there was so much damage coming in from the Tactical Marines. A little bit of an unnecessary loss there of the Dire Avengers. Of course, part of it does have a little bit to do with the RNG of special attacks, and you know that's we can also blame that. Tactical Marines absolutely have to get out of here before they risk losing too many models. If he does manage this correctly, he shouldn't have to lose any models, except for the fact that I don't think the Shotgun Scouts have a Shotgun Blast. Yeah, so Shotgun Scouts not having a Shotgun Blast, it seems, does mean that one of those Tactical Marine models go down. I think if he did have a Shotgun Blast ready, he could just Shotgun Blast the Howling Banshees away. All 3 Tactical Marine models make it out alive, but it looks like it was used on something else. Both players going to be heading into Tier 2. It's a victory point lead for Moomin. Very slight Tier 2 advantage for Eliphas, or rather Inekura, but not really an appreciable one that does make a significant difference. No upgrades on the Techmarine, which I think is okay. He's been managing the Howling Banshees well enough, and it just saves a lot of resources not having to upgrade to the Mastercrafted Bolter. Oh no, Inekura, not Inekura, Moomin. I'm just mixing up the players. Can't even tell the difference between the two, but this could be a Guardian weapon team going down. Indeed it is. Wow, I was wondering for a second if that almost wasn't worth it going for the grenade, but it is actually a play that ends up managing to wipe one of those Guardian weapon teams. That is actually quite a big play. This could put Inekura in a very difficult position where if Moomin decides to get a Razorback, Eliphas is in a very rough position, or Inekura, whatever his name is, where putting a Bright Lance on this Guardian weapon team. Yeah, so there's the Razorback. Putting a Bright Lance on the Guardian weapon team gives up the suppression, which makes Inekura have so little available for actually fighting the infantry. Also makes it very easy for the Assault Marines to just instantly jump that target, and then once they jump on the Guardian weapon team with the Bright Lance, the Razorback basically gets free reign. It's a very strong position for for Moomin, and I think, yeah, in the end, that play he made, moving the Shotgun Scouts up for that grenade, as much as they came very close to dying, it paid off. It was a risk, but it was a risk that paid off in his favor, and it leaves him in a very, very strong position. So, like, what does Inekura do here? Obviously, he needs to respond to the Razorback, and the most powerful thing he can have is a Guardian weapon team. I think another option is he gets a Falcon of his own. Problem with the Falcon, though, is he also lost the Guardians, so he would need to get Guardians on top of that. It's going to be a while before he would have both of those things available, and in the meantime, Moomin can just move forward and bash this farm. I think Moomin should really try to press his advantage here and take as much of this farm as he can while he can. So instead of the Falcon, we're going to see the Wraithlord instead. Wraithlord will most likely be upgraded to a Bright Lance of its own to put more threat on that Razorback. And that will also force definitely more of a response out of Moomin as well. Tactical Marines are level 3, so at this point, I don't think... Okay, for a second there, I thought they were upgrading to Stern Guard Veterans when I was just about to say I don't think they should upgrade to Stern Guard Veterans if they're already level 3. And the Guardian weapon team here, although it will slowly but surely lose to the Razorback, it does buy some time. It buys time that the Razorback and the Tactical Marines were not bashing the generators, and now the Wraithlord is here, and it has a Bright Lance. This is actually very, very good damage control from Inekura. There still certainly is some disruption on his power with that decap, but I think this is something that is not crippling. What could be crippling, though, is if he loses this Guardian Weapon Team, but he won't. Not enough damage ready to go out on that, even with the Assault Marines having a Sergeant. Looks like some of those Assault Marine models getting knocked back by the ranged attack of the Merciless Witchblade. Could result in a model kill here. Staggered jump from the Assault Marines, but they managed to get all of them out of there alive. Now they actually have to be super careful, though, about the Howling Banshees and possibly retreating through the Banshees. They don't have enough energy for a Merciless Strike. I think they should just retreat out of here as soon as possible. They lose the Sergeant. I think they're extremely lucky to only lose the Sergeant there. I think they could have lost a lot more. Moomin going potentially a little bit overkill on his counters to the Wraithlord, getting both the Melt-A-Bomb from Thunder and Lightning as well as the Orbs of the Omnicide. Now, it certainly gives him a lot of power to make a play here and possibly take this out. If anything, okay, he does get Stern Guard Veterans, though. He does get Stern Guard Veterans on his level 3 Tactical Marine Squad. A little bit surprising to see that. This would have been a case where I personally would have preferred to actually just see the Missile Launcher, especially Missile Launcher on a level 3 Tactical Marine Squad, going to be doing some increased damage. Would put a nice amount of threat on this Wraithlord. As it is, Assault Marines looking... Okay, they can't jump in, because if they jump in, they won't have enough energy to use the Melt-A-Bomb. So they're just walking in raw. They get the Melt-A-Bomb off. Unfortunately, they're taking a lot of damage in the process. Again, 2 models down, but not the Sergeant. I think this will be the end of the Wraithlord nevertheless, so he does make his play. We have some Dark Reapers here, but unfortunately now without the Wraithlord, they are just going to lose this fight, and their position just so far up that they are tanking damage. Ideally, with the Dark Reapers, you really want them in the back where they can just outrange your opponent's army, as they do have greater than standard range. I think the number was 48 units for the Dark Reaper's range. Give or take a few units, but standard range on most units is 38. So, for example, the Stern Guard Veterans only have 38 range. And it's actually been a pretty commanding game in Moomin's favor. The best I can say for Inekura is he had some good crisis management on the initial push by the Razorback on the power, and Moomin definitely did not get as much punish out of his tech lead, or rather the fact that he had a vehicle out when Inekura didn't, as possible. But this is still looking pretty strong for Moomin. And I would say the Dreadnought probably seals the game. Moomin is having enough... God, I just not getting the names correct. It's just been too much time since I've last cast, like a couple days since that 3v3. But between the Razorback with the reinforced armor plating, the Dreadnought, I think Inekura just does not have the resources to put out enough anti-vehicle threat to deal with the combination of the two vehicles. He's got a backcapping Warlock, decapping some power. But with these double vehicles, like Moomin can do one of two things, possibly even both. He can make a push for this power farm and absolutely 100% should be able to destroy the whole thing. Or he can control the map and just get a triple cap, and then the VP pressure would just pretty much just be strangling Inekura. He's got only about 100 left. Scouts, though. Why are scouts going down? Okay, scouts do not go down. Techmarine is going down. So Inekura scoring some victories against all odds when he's very, very much in a losing position. Certainly better to get that Techmarine kill than not, although I don't think it'll actually be too hard for Moomin to buy back the Techmarine. Although between the unnecessary model losses on the scouts as well as having to buy back the Techmarine, it does slow things down a little bit for Moomin. I'm not sure that it matters. Here's the Dreadnought. Howling Banshees can't do a whole lot about this. Assault Marine's willing to jump all the way into base to jump on the Guardian Weapon Team. Makes it so that the Dreadnought, if it wants, can actually just go all the way into base. It can if it wants, but you know what? I think this game is more or less over. Inekura is trying to stay in it, though, doing everything he can. The Warlock has just been on backcapping duty, only with the Merciless Witchblade. Merciless Witchblade by itself is not always such a powerful upgrade, and certainly not going to matter if the Warlock is down. I think that's it for Inekura. Fire Dragon's trying to put some pressure on that Razorback, but unfortunately they are not trading favorably. It's Fire Dragon models for Razorback health, and that's a losing trade for the Fire Dragons every single time. Tactical Marines, or rather Stern Guard veterans, slightly out of position here. Really could have this Dreadnought. Dreadnought should, like, once the Howling Banshees start approaching, two things should happen. Dreadnought should start approaching the Howling Banshees, and the Stern Guard veterans should also start approaching the Howling Banshees, but a little bit of a moot point. That is the concede from Inekura, and that is game number 1, going in favor of Moomin. But this is a best-of-5 series, so we're not done yet. Alright, game number 2 will take place on Quest Heresy. Inekura will be switching over to the Inquisitor, melee commander for the Imperial Guard. Also has some spells and some control. His opponent, Moomin, will be switching over to the Mekboy. Mekboy is a ranged hero who can repair, teleport, and even heal. So then, obviously, this is the Elite League. That does mean that our players do need to switch their hero every single game, and in a best-of-5 series, there is the possibility that they will have to play every single hero in their pool, so going to need to display some versatility here. Mekboy will teleport forward, just kind of aggressively using his mobility. He will encounter the Inquisitor. Inquisitor will use Hammer of the Witches, just using that single-target stun. Now the Mekboy just looking to get out of here. He will find himself a Sentinel to put some pressure on. Between the Mekboy and the Shooters, they're putting some decent pressure on this Sentinel from 2 different angles. Sentinel, though, able to move back. Although there is some pressure on the Sentinel there, it's still so early on in the game that we don't have any upgrades on the Shooter Boys or even on the Mekboy, so the pressure won't quite be strong enough to really threat to kill that Sentinel, barring any major misplays by Inekura. But this is very much a matchup, Orcs versus Imperial Guard, where there is a lot of potential early game pressure against the Sentinel when you start putting some upgrades on those Shooter Boys. The big shooters, the Shooter Knob, especially when you get both, it's a lot of damage coming out in Tier 1. Really going to test your opponent's micro, in this case Inekura's micro, to make sure he can keep that Sentinel alive throughout Tier 1. We're actually going to see a Luda purchase first, and the Luda purchase will delay those upgrades on the Shooter Boys, so as we see, this does give a little bit more time where Inekura is actually winning fights off of this decision from Moomin to delay these upgrades on the Shooters. But the Luda does serve a purpose here. The Ludas are good at just setting up an area where a Sentinel cannot push forward. The Luda won't do a whole lot of damage when the Sentinel is at, like, kind of the maximum range or at long range, but the Sentinel just can't push into an area covered by the Luda, because the closer it gets to the Luda, the more damage the Luda will do, and then it most likely would actually die. So we see Inekura really trying to play around this. He's choosing not to engage the Luda, choosing to just go around, capture up the map where he can. However, Moomin actually has had the better end of map control, since he didn't really go for a direct engage against the Sentinel either. He didn't have both Shooter squads grouped up together, and generally when you want to actually fight the Imperial Guard, and actually when you want to fight a lot of races as Orcs, you usually do actually want your Shooters grouped up together. So splitting them up in that early game meant that he was really more looking for map control rather than for fights. And Moomin does have the better end of map control. It's 500 victory points to already less than 400 for Inekura. Inekura now going to look for a Catachan Devil purchase. Sentinel moving around. This Mekboy really just teleporting around the map here. He's very much behind enemy lines. I am hearing some upgraded shooters, though. Big shooters on one Shooter squad. Second one does not have an upgrade. He's going to get the Shooter Knob, however. Sometimes what you actually see in this matchup is players going for the shoot-a knob first, and part of the reason for that is both upgrades will grant you an increase in DPS, but the shoot-a knob upgrade will also give you an extra model. That extra model is quite a bit tankier than the existing shoot-a models, like by a lot, actually. Yeah, the individual shoot-a models have 125 hit points. The shoot-a knob has 285 hit points. So he's just a lot tankier. Makes the squad last a lot longer when you are trading with a Sentinel. And it's still generally a losing trade in terms of models, but you're looking to buy space. And if possible, you're also just looking to take out the Sentinel. But still, usually just one shoot-a squad by itself is not quite enough. Yeah, I don't quite agree with this play. I don't think Moomin does get this victory point, at least not without paying a lot of models for it, and eventually he realizes that it's not worth it. We will see an upgrade on the Inquisitor as well, going for the crossbow bolt pistol. So this does a few things. Of course, there is the crippling volley ability, which will just pin down any squads that are caught in it. Can be very useful, but I actually think that's not the main reason why Inekura went for this upgrade at this time. I think the main reason he went for this upgrade was actually just for the range damage. 30 piercing DPS, not a hugely impressive number, but it's certainly better than what she starts out with. It puts her in line with about, say, like a scout squad with a sergeant, slightly better even. Not only that, but it actually gives you a piercing weapon. And usually, piercing weapons are not actually that desirable. But this would actually be a case where a piercing weapon would be desirable. The Inquisitor starts off with a plasma pistol. And plasma actually has a penalty against regular infantry. And right now, Moomin's entire army is regular infantry. So not only that, but the plasma pistol still doesn't really have a great starting DPS. So small starting DPS combined with that penalty, as a shoot-a is actually, or rather as a Sentinel, is actually taken out by the double shoot-as. But basically just that starting ranged weapon for the Inquisitor, not going to be very effective against the Orcs. This crossbow bolt pistol will be quite a bit better. But yeah, that Sentinel actually does just go down, and that is the power of these fully upgraded shoot-as. I kind of just barely caught it or just barely missed it, depending on your point of view on the screen. Basically, if you're just not really on top of your micro, as the Imperial Guard player, when you're staring down two fully upgraded squads of shoot-as, you could just lose your Sentinel right then and there, and that is what happened to Inekura. Not only that, even if you really can be on top of your micro, just the double shoot-a boys, when fully upgraded, they just put so much pressure that it's a lot harder for the Sentinel to get its full value. It still will get some, because the shoot-as will bleed. And in this case, we actually see shoot-as bleeding a lot now. Well, and by a lot, I guess I mean two models. Catachan Devils coming out on the field. Double Catachan Devils for Inekura. And the double Catachan Devils will, in a way, kind of take the place of the Sentinel as basically just being the core of his army that allows him to possibly win engagements through a lot of the crowd control abilities that come out of these Catachan Devils. Catachan Devils need to get close to use their actual shotguns, which is their passive damage that is not cooldown gated. So in this case, they're trying to use all of those over-reliables to disrupt the shoot-a boys until the Catachan Devils can actually get in range to use their shotguns, or, well, in this case, to get in range to use their melee weapons, which is also their shotguns, since a lot of times they just kind of bludgeon them with the shotguns, aside from that one model that does have a rather big knife. Catachan Devils will be laying down an IED. And both players will be moving into Tier 2. Inekura with the tech lead at the moment. Interesting to actually see Inekura does have the tech lead, and apparently the Mekboy somehow went down really close to his base, and I missed it, chasing down, just following those Catachan Devils. So despite the fact that the Sentinel went down, things are going a bit better for Inekura. He still has a big VP deficit, but he's made it to Tier 2 first. And I'm even trying to figure out how did Moomin fall behind? Certainly he had more of the victory points, but I guess I didn't look closely enough at the contested resource points to see how he was doing in regards to that. Certainly had very heavy investments on the shooter boys, fully upgraded them, but that's also very much to be expected. Meanwhile, oh, this is a Bane Wolf coming out. Bane Wolf uses a Chimera chassis, but switches out the transport space for this weapon here. This chemical cannon, or chem cannon for short. Gonna move in. Moomin has no answer to it yet. And although Moomin was in tier 2, like, he wasn't substantially behind, but Inekura is actually just very decisively taking advantage of this small window that he has where this Bane Wolf is unanswered. And he didn't even necessarily know that he had... I mean... Well, he may have had some sense, but, like, he didn't even got a generator bash before. Now he's certainly got one. But I feel like there wasn't necessarily, like, a clear indication that the play that he just made was safe. It worked. I think he took a risk. I think it paid off massively. But just trying to imagine where he is, I don't think he necessarily knew that he could have driven that Bane Wolf in there and have it actually take no damage whatsoever. We're now going to see a Beamy Luda. Almost a little too late. So Moomin does have the Death Dread out here. The Death Dread moving forward does force the Bane Wolf to move back, but I think the Bane Wolf already got most of its value. I mean, the Bane Wolf is very much a unit that it's so situational that I often forget it exists. It's only accessible to the Inquisitor, and in a lot of cases the Chimera is better anyway. You specifically get the Bane Wolf when you're looking to make the exact play that Inekura made, which is you move that forward and you bash your opponent's farm. And you're looking to get 3 generators minimum, honestly, when you try to make a Bane Wolf play with that. Because honestly, if you don't get 3 generators minimum, I think your Bane Wolf did not get the value that it needed to get. So Inekura got that. He probably fell a little bit short. He didn't destroy the node, but definitely the obviously the generators get a lot more of the damage here. Death Dread trying to move in, actually trying to charge this heavy weapon team, but unfortunately that wasn't the only source of damage against the Death Dread. There were also 2 squads of Catachan Devils that did have sergeants with meltaguns, and they melted it with their meltaguns. I'm sure I've probably said that at some point. And with that, that is the concede from Moomin, and that will be Inekura tying up the series at 1-1. Game number 3 will take place on Calderis Refinery. Inekura will be sticking with the Imperial Guard, but he still has to switch heroes, so now he will be playing the Lord Commissar, slightly tanky melee hero with a free energy shield and the ability to execute his own troops to make them fight harder. His opponent, Moomin, going to be going back to the Space Marines, this time as the Apothecary, healing commander with a passive heal and a targeted... I messed that up. Passive heal and a targeted heal. Forgot the passive health regeneration aura, but at any rate. Rather expected build coming out of Inekura, going for the double guardsman, the single sentinel. Also is a possibility for the double sentinel. I feel like I don't actually think that is that likely in this matchup, and I think this would also be a matchup where that is potentially less effective, given the way the Apothecary can kind of mitigate the trading value of the Sentinel with his healing. Commissar is beset, so let's take a look at what's going on here. Trying to get into melee with some Tactical Marines. Tactical Marines looking to get into melee with some Guardsmen. Of course, the Guardsmen as well as the Apothecary will win that quite handily. And since there is no control to actually slow down the Tactical Marines or the Apothecary down, it is a forced retreat for the Guardsmen. Meanwhile, this Commissar, he actually does not really win this fight. The combination of the Tactical Marines as well as the Apothecary, I'm pretty sure will win. The Tactical Marines, they don't actually have to chase the Sentinel. They want to put the pressure on the Sentinel, but I think the better play here is to try to put the pressure on the Commissar, possibly even scare him. Like, he will have to retreat pretty fast if he is force meleeed by the Tactical Marines as well as the Apothecary. He does not win that. There's way too much melee DPS coming out of the Tactical Marine squad as well as the Apothecary, compared to that Commissar, who is not going to be putting out enough. So yeah, I think the force melee from the Tactical Marines should have come out earlier. I don't think it was actually worth it for them to try to chase down the Sentinel, especially since this Sentinel does not have a Stomp ready. If it does not have a Stomp ready, it wouldn't be able to stop the Tactical Marines, really, from exerting that pressure on the Commissar. Tactical Marines, meanwhile, they can exert a lot of pressure of their own. They're going to be in cover. They're going to stay in cover. Wow, they actually managed to move forward just a little bit while staying in cover to continue to put pressure on the Sentinel. I'm not actually sure that that is worth it, though, because now they're getting themselves into a trading war between the Sentinel. And although they can hold in here in this cover for a very long time against the low range damage of the Sentinel, they are not going to be... It's still technically a losing fight, at least until there is some support from the Tactical Marines. So it's really just buying time. Ooh, Sentinel, I think, was looking to move forward for an aggressive stomp, but once the Devastator Marine squad is there, that play is off the table. So Devastator Marines, just once again, serving the same purpose that Luda would, which is that it just sets up an area where the Sentinel cannot push forward. If that was only the Tactical Marines there, Sentinel could have tanked enough damage to break the cover that the Tactical Marines were hiding behind and possibly even get a stomp on them. But Devastator Marines just completely shut that down, and Inekura realizes and just keeps the Sentinel out of there. And he just can't really push into this area. He can move to the edges of the firing arc where he will take limited amounts of damage. One of the problems there, though, although he can take these small amounts of damage from when the Devastator Marine is far away, the repairing Guardsmen can still get suppressed, and then that leaves them a little bit more exposed for pressure to be put on them by Tactical Marines, by the Apothecary. Apothecary, however, is all by himself. He's stunned, so he can't even heal himself now. Oh no, don't lose the Apothecary here. Oh no, he's going to lose it. If he can just get a heal, he gets a heal. He needs to retreat immediately. Okay, that will keep the Apothecary alive, and that was a close call, and that honestly was so important. That's something that losing the Apothecary right there could have... Honestly, it could have really turned the tide of this game, where it could have potentially put Moomin in a losing position literally for the entire game. It would just be so much harder to fight Inekura's army, which is getting bigger and bigger, although Inekura at this point is kind of letting Moomin do this generator bash, and Moomin is set up. Not a great arc for this Devastator Marine squad, though. I think Moomin realized it and he corrects it, so that's definitely a much better firing arc. And I think with this, he gets a full power bash. Inekura is not going to be able to stop it. He can't push into this. He'll throw out the old reliable, does not even connect on the Devastator Marines. This is a lost fight for him, I think. He's going to try to get the Commissar in, but the Commissar will be suppressed. All right, with the old reliable from the second Catachan Devil Squad, he does manage to get into range of the Devastator Marine Squad, but he still loses all his generators for it. Inekura deciding to defend his farm rather than to try to counter bash. And I hate to say it, but I think it probably was the right choice, because, you know, at best he's going to be moving up Sentinels and Guardsmen here, and they don't even bash very quickly. Double cap, though, for Inekura, so this is the most even game we've had so far in terms of victory points in the early game. Sentinel moving around. Sentinel, I think, also lasting just a little bit longer. Not quite as much pressure on this Sentinel as there would be against Orcs. Certainly with only a single Tactical Marine squad. Tactical Marines also switched out one of those bolters for a Flamer. So yeah, the overall pressure that Moomin is going to have against the Sentinel is not going to be nearly as great as he did when he was playing Orcs and had the double upgraded Shooter Boys. Another thing worth considering might be to consider getting the Mastercrafted Bolter on this Apothecary to just help him to contribute a little bit more. Ooh, but here is the Generator Bash happening at this time. Devastator Marines at this time. This time, they can't stay here any longer. They have been disrupted. And now with Catachan Devils in a position here for a Generator Bash, there's a much better chance that we do see a Generator Bash happen by Inekura. So Moomin just going to look for the trade. It is very sensible, given that he actually will bash faster. He will actually probably bash Inekura's power farm before Inekura bashes his. But it should be a full trade in both directions. And this is something where it kind of stalls out both players tech-wise, but it also keeps them relatively even. That being said, Moomin is already in Tier 2. And this is a little bit of a consequence of Inekura going for a rather large Tier 1. Getting double Catachan Devils would definitely be considered a rather large Tier 1, and he got a Power Sword on the Force Commander, which I think is a good choice in the matchup, but I just think it begins to get a little excessive when you also have double Catachan Devils. It's still not a particularly upgrade-heavy Tier 1, although we do have upgrades on the Guardsman, but that's a upgrade that doesn't cost any power, getting the Sergeant to increase the squad to 9 models. Sentinel does have the Stomp, which is very much to be expected. Still, he is behind. And this is a Razorback. This is a Razorback with Inekura still in Tier 1. So, you know, this might actually be one of the rare situations where this Razorback has come out and it doesn't actually, despite the tech lead that Moomin had, and despite the fact that this Razorback is here, I don't actually think this is a hugely impactful Razorback purchase. There isn't actually much of an opportunity to capitalize on a Generator Bash, because he already got a Generator Bash, and unfortunately he suffered a Generator Bash of his own. So it's like, what does he do with this Razorback? I'll tell you what he needs to do, which is he needs to take advantage of the mobility of the Razorback to start capturing the map. Because Moomin had a tech lead, but now he doesn't have the map anymore. I guess he can still... I think he needs, at this point, he needs, like, the map more than he needs the Generator Bash. Because there's not even a whole lot to bash there, just a single generator. So, I'm normally a very big proponent of the Razorback. I feel this is an occasion where I think it did not get a whole lot of value. Certainly, there's still a lot of strong things about it and ways in which it can continue to have value. Providing reinforcements for these Space Marines out on the field can make it... can definitely help Moomin be able to just control this middle victory point between the healing of the Apothecary as well as the reinforcements of the Razorback. He can theoretically stay out here for a very long time as long as he manages his engagements correctly. Double Tactical Marines out of Moomin, also something that can be very strong as well. Going to be a lot of pressure on the Sentinel as well as the Guardsman, especially if we do see this second Tactical Marine squad, or really either tactical, should be the second one, second Tactical Marine squad upgraded to Stern Guard veterans. I feel like we will eventually see that, but it might be a little bit of time as Moomin is already pretty low on resources. So Sentinel has been up. Ooh, very nice EED catch. IED catches the Tactical Marines, but does not actually take out a model. So maybe it wasn't that nice. It caught them, but did not actually really get too much. Certainly no bleed inflicted on Moomin. Does get the Tactical Marines off the field, however, so that will certainly be a lot of less pressure against the Sentinel. Moomin, however, has taken kind of enough of the map back. Certainly the victory point is what he really needs. And now the ball is a lot more in Inekura's court. He could put some pressure on these side requisition points if he really wanted to. But we're getting to the point in the game where the victory points are going to start mattering quite a bit more. Grenade goes in, not fully dodged. Quite a few models actually caught in that, and now it's just a retreat for Inekura. Inekura feels like he's starting to not entirely know what to do. He's engaging from behind, but his guardsmen have already been forced off the field, so there is also no repairs for this Sentinel. He's going to try to use Old Reliable to detonate the mines, snare the Razorback, and actually not even needed. The Razorback is finished off. I don't know what happened there. Where were the scouts? They were off capturing a point, didn't even provide any repairs. And that was it. The Razorback just taken out there, just like that. I mean, I don't think it was actually the greatest Razorback purchase, but I'm still not sure if I would just want to give it up. And it may not have been just intentionally giving it up, but I don't know. It seemed a little strange to me. Techmarines will be okay. Ooh, I think those Techmarines were trying to detonate the mines while the Catachan Devils were retreating over them. I think that does friendly fire. In any case, it is a one engagement for Inekura. Certainly forcing some squads off the field, inflicting a little bit of bleed in the process as well. And I think things are slightly favoring Inekura here. He has had the better power income for a while now because he rebuilt his farm a little bit earlier. Moomin only just now rebuilding a single generator. So Inekura is still very low on requisition, but I think there's a much greater chance that he makes it to tier 3 before Moomin does. If Moomin is ever even able to go to tier 3. Really just depends on how things go and how long this game goes. But Moomin has definitely been set pretty far back at this time, whereas I feel that Inekura has mostly recovered in terms of his economy and being able to make it into tier 3. That being said, Inekura not choosing to push in at the moment. Commissar will lead the way, but he's going to get burned down pretty quickly. Might even go down. Assault Marines might even want to look for that. No, they're too busy in a merciless strike animation, also getting stunned by a Sentinel. Might not have been the greatest push by them. That is a Commissar flare, so the Tactical Marines as well as the Apothecary moving in a lot closer there in their attempt to try to fight the Imperial Guard. And we do also see that the customized Stormbolter on the Apothecary. Apothecary, we're also seeing him go down, though, knocked over by the Catachan Devils. And Moomin actually does not have that much red. I would think by this time of the game, he would have the red to just be able to get back the Apothecary through Lariman's Blessing, but he also used his red to call in the second tack squad with the drop pod. He's not too far off, but at the same time, he's going to need to do some fighting before he can get the Apothecary back with Lariman's Blessing, unless he just chooses to buy it back with Requisition. I think this is... It's kind of a tough call. I think it's still probably better to buy the Apothecary back with Lariman's Blessing. However, all right, he's not going to do it. I think just concerned that it could take too long. He would need to make sure he either inflicts losses or takes losses for that to happen. And if it starts getting to the point where he's taking losses, then that doesn't become worth it anymore because he could just use the Requisition on those losses to just buy back the Apothecary. Only would have been 27 red away, though. Okay, but he is using the Apothecary here in this engagement to help him win this engagement, and that will also take out the Commissar. Full auto use to stun the Commissar, and then just follow-up damage. Just puts him in a rough situation, and that is a dead Commissar. So things looking good for Moomin. Looks like it ended up being the right play to revive the Apothecary with Requisition. The Apothecary was pretty critical in helping Moomin win that fight. And that means the victory points will trade hands again. Currently, this game proven to be a little bit longer than the last ones, I think. I'm not counting at the moment, but it certainly feels like it's going on a lot longer. And part of that, I think, is just the nature of Calderis Refinery, where it's mostly a fight over the contested victory point in the middle as far as the victory point countdown. It's very, very difficult to even get a decap on your opponent's natural, let alone get a full cap. So that is also, it's sometimes a criticism of this map by certain players where they feel that games on this map can go on unnecessarily long because it is more difficult than it should be to actually put pressure on your opponent's natural victory point. Alright then, Sentinel slowly putting on the pressure on the Devastator Marines. Devastator Marines trying to hit the Sentinel with Vengeance rounds, but it's slowly but surely proving to be a winning trade for the Sentinel. Sentinel does force off the Devastator Marines. However, because that did take so much time, that is another full Generator Bash by Moomin, actually making quite a good recovery here. Inekura going to Tier 3. And he's going to Tier 3. He did just suffer a Power Bash, but he's actually in a decent position where he could actually have a Lehman Russ coming out relatively shortly despite suffering that Power Bash. So to do that, he would not actually repurchase the node or the generators just yet because he's already got plenty of power for it, and he wants to hold that requisition. Yeah, I think regardless of what he gets. Ooh, did he need to do some reinforcements? Because I'm just noticing his requisition going down by quite a bit. I think regardless of what Inekura intends to get in Tier 3, I think he should not get this node back too soon. He's got enough power in the bank for most Tier 3 purchases, or at least enough power that he's going to be very close to it. Probably won't be a Baneblade, and I don't think that would be a good choice anyway. But for either Casterkins or a Lehman Russ, I think he just waits for the requisition. Moomin, on the other hand, getting a Librarian, of all things. It honestly does strike me as a little bit of a curious purchase at this time, but it might also just be Moomin feeling like he's stuck in Tier 2 and he wants to get something to just add more to what he already has. I think he might also... yeah, and it's also something that's a bit cheaper than something like a Dreadnought, which I think would have been the other choice, and in my opinion, probably a better choice, but an expensive one that he was probably going to have trouble getting to. Stomp catches all 3 units there, both Tactical Marine squads as well as the Apothecary. That hurts. And now the Tactical Marine squad with the Sergeant is taking some plasma shots. And they decide to turn and try to fight this. I don't think it's actually worth it for them. They're going to lose models and probably not inflict too much damage in the process. Oh no! Devastator Marines nearly getting wiped there. They use Angels of Death. I don't even know if I feel that's the greatest use of Angels of Death. I think at that point the Angels of Death there was mostly a desperate play to try to keep the Devastator Marines off the field. But eventually he does overwhelm the Guardsmen, and that does force a retreat from Inekura. So once again, we just have kind of the push-pull of this game with Moomin retaking the contested victory point. It's pushing in harder. So there's nothing to bash here, which again, there shouldn't be. So Moomin might just be looking to get the victory point here, actually try to accelerate the victory point countdown in his favor. But we're going to see the opposite happen from Inekura. So there is indeed the Lehman Russ. Yeah, I think that's the ideal choice for actually quite a few reasons. There are a lot of reasons why. First of all, would most likely force the Devastators off the advanced targeting and into a las cannon, which would give it a little bit less pressure against the Sentinel, also less control against the Guardsmen. And I think it's also something that I guess the Librarian with the Tome of Time can empower the Devastator Marines. Also could potentially force a missile launcher purchase from either one of these Tactical Marine squads, which would also keep Moomin in Tier 2 longer and possibly just lock him out of Tier 3 for the game. So let's see if this Leman Russ does as well as I think it should. Sentinel, meanwhile, also living ages. And when you have a Sentinel that does actually live this long, the missile launcher is very potent, just with the burst damage that it does. Really lets the Sentinel work in more of a hit-and-run fashion. It's got great range, too. I mean, just look at how effective it is against the devastating Marine squad. Smite does go out, though, so that will force the guardsmen to retreat. And Inekura doesn't really have any sustainability in the form of either a bunker or a Chimera. So that is one squad that is going down. Oh, no. Now some pressure on that Sentinel. It's a level 2 Sentinel, almost level 3. This Sentinel needs to keep moving back, or it is going to die. And he does lose it. Oh, man. Just when I was kind of talking up, keeping that Sentinel alive, I thought it would have been great to keep that Sentinel alive. And the Commissar goes down as well. What is happening here for Inekura? Meanwhile, we're going to see the Vanquisher Cannon purchased. I've talked a lot about the Vanquisher Cannon. I don't know if I like the Vanquisher Cannon purchased that much here. It's going to make the Leman Russ a little bit less effective, I think, against the Tactical Marines. I guess against Space Marines, it's also kind of debatable. I think you could actually make an argument for the Vanquisher being just better against Space Marines, because that single target damage is actually nice against these tough Tactical Marine models. But I think the default Battle Cannon might actually still give you more damage, like, per shot, because you would be getting the splash damage, which would be hitting multiple models on a squad. So no splash on this Vanquisher. Longer range, but not long enough to outrange a las cannon. Yeah, I think it's very debatable here. I think the best argument is just that the single target damage would actually be better for sniping the models on the Tactical Marines and the Assault Marines. As well as possibly even the Devastating Marines, especially if you can score the lead model. So Moomin just moving around. He's all bunched up, though. Ooh. I was going to say, okay, we have Angels of Death activated there. Assault Marines jumping in. This is actually a pretty good fight for them. And it's just a retreat here from all of these guardsmen. I'm actually not even sure I agree with the full-on retreat here. At this point, I think part of what Inekura maybe should do is put down a... Okay, he did use the summary execution. I was about to say, put down a medic bunker. Okay, there it is. So that at least when he does retreat, he can use the summary execution to stay out on the field. Unfortunately, Catachan Devils don't have that option, so this is still kind of a problem for him. Meanwhile, Librarian is actually working out quite a bit better than I think I was giving it credit for. This las cannon putting a lot of threat on the Leman Russ, along with the mobility that it has. Inekura keeping it alive, but he's been so cautious where he has given up a pretty significant victory point lead. The last time he had the victory points, he had about 250, and it's getting close to the point where soon he's going to have less than 100. I think he will have less than 100 by the time he is able to retake the victory points, if he does retake the victory points at this time. He's got some Castricans right here, though, so that should assist him in that process. Castricans definitely going to want to wait until they actually have the plasma guns before they do make that move. I actually don't like the Catachan Devils doing this. Like, at this point, I don't think there's a whole lot to be gained just by getting this one contested power point, and I think he puts himself in a position... Okay, he does distract the Tactical Marines. He does distract one squad of Tactical Marines, and he is able to engage in a better position, so maybe that distraction actually worked. Because now these Tactical Marines here, the scouts also being wiped by the Catachan Devils, but the Catachan Devils themselves getting pretty close. If they can at least get out of here alive, I know a bigger engagement is happening over here. Catachan Devils, he forgot about the Catachan Devils and they go down. Oh my god. If the Catachan Devils had retreated out of there, I think it would have, and he never captured the victory point. What is going on here? Like, that actually seemed like it was working for a second there, where he had distracted 2 of Moomin's units with only 1 of his own, and then he was pushing forward with a numbers advantage in the middle, but he never actually took the contested victory point. And now a Plasma Cannon Devastator squad is set up here, and that's going to make it even harder for Inekura to push in. Because just 1 wind-up and 1 shot from this Plasma Cannon Devastator would just put so much... Oh no, he's going to walk right into it. Okay, he's not going to walk right into it. Now he is going to walk right into it. Okay. So he knows that it's there, but they get a shot off before the flare even takes effect. Or were they just not affected? What happened? It feels like to me this Plasma Cannon Devastator should have been affected by that flare, and it seems like it just never happened. I don't know. Eventually he is able to force off the Devastator. Commissar still dead on the floor there. Slow game here. Inekura finally, after 200 victory points later, is able to take back the contested victory point. So this game isn't over yet, but he certainly is cutting it a bit close here. What is Moomin's plan, though? Moomin has been in a difficult situation economically for a very long time now. He does not have a scout squad, and at the moment, as long as he doesn't have a vehicle, there's no pressing need to get another one. I almost think it... Oh, he lost the Las Cannon Devastator. So his next purchase should probably be a new Devastator squad. I was going to say, like, what does he get at this point? Probably not a vehicle, because his vehicle choice would basically be a Razorback or a Dreadnought. In kind of like these situations here, these low mobility fights, these standoffs in the middle, the Dreadnought is a lot more valuable than the Razorback. But the Dreadnought is just so expensive that it would be so difficult for Moomin to afford, and any vehicle would require him to get a new scout squad. But a lot of things going on in this engagement. Catachans as well as Kashikins going straight for the Plasma Cannon Devastator, but a missile from the Tax will take out the Leman Russ, and that is definitely the bigger win here. I think this might be game going in favor to Moomin. Guardsman squad went down, so did the Leman Russ. I think this is too much. Like, crazy as it is, Moomin is the one who is stuck in Tier 2. But you know what he could even do right now? He could drop down another tax squad. He could drop a tax squad, and that would actually be incredibly tough for Inekura to deal with. Like, what is Inekura? Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, the cap is being briefly delayed by the... Yeah, there's just nothing else Inekura can do, despite the fact that he was the one in Tier 3. And they shall know no fear tactical Marines. Kind of just buying time here. Assault Marines even trying to capture the natural victory point. I don't think it's even necessary, but it just moves things over a little bit faster. Over Reliable does not knock them off the point, so they're going to get it, and then I think they'll just jump out. Or they'll commit here to fighting. That's a triple cap for Moomin. So despite being stuck in Tier 2, he will take game number 3 and brings it to a 2-1 lead in his favor. Game number 4 will take place on Jarillo's Forge, and Inekura will be switching over to Sindri, Trollface, Chaos Sorcerer. Chaos Hero with spells, control, and manipulation. And Moomin going to be switching over to his last Space Marine hero. The last Space Marine hero there is, the Force Commander, tanky melee hero that buffs and disrupts with Battlecry. So it does seem pretty clear that Moomin is a Space Marine main, as He actually had all 3 heroes from that faction, and that is a way to kind of reduce the overall variability or just diversity in your pool. If you have trouble playing multiple heroes, kind of just play all the heroes from one faction, as Moomin has done. And, oh man, this is actually... I've certainly played this matchup quite a bit in the past. One that I have loved watching and casting. Sorcerer against the Force Commander. Sorcerer does struggle a little bit with single target damage in the early game. And what that does mean is that he has a little bit of trouble specifically dealing with the Force Commander himself. Sorcerer's strength, though, is big burst damage. We should see another Doombolts go in on the Tactical Marines. Unfortunately, going to miss them entirely, which is a huge problem, and that does mean that it's definitely going to be a lost engagement for Inekura right there. So yeah, the Sorcerer does not have a lot to answer the Force Commander this early on in the game, so he definitely wants to focus a lot more on putting pressure on the Space Marine squads, particularly the Tactical Marines with his Doombolts, whereas the Scouts want to be handled a little bit more with the Chaos Space Marines, as Chaos Space Marines will just win directly against the Scouts. If the Scouts get engaged by the Chaos Space Marines either just want to get out of there, or they want the support of the Force Commander. So Force Commander's still here. We see the Heretics being used to control the Force Commander with suppression, as the Chaos Space Marines continue to put some damage pressure on him. Continuing to do that, but eventually the Chaos Space Marines will get overwhelmed, and yeah, they want to retreat out of here before they lose a model again. Or, not again, but just before they lose a model. So early engagements have gone in Moomin's favor. With the way both of these players are saving their resources and have only gotten a single node, it's indicating jump squads for both, so most likely Raptors for Inekura as well as Assault Marines for Moomin. The Assault Marine is very typical for a Space Marine Tier 1, especially with the Force Commander. For Chaos, a little bit less so. And if Inekura is going for anything other than Raptors, okay, it will be Raptors. Because if he was going for anything other than Raptors, then he was just floating a bit too much. Yeah, and the Raptors, it's also something where the effect of the Raptors is... It's a little bit harder to, I think, to really get full value out of them. Certainly they'll be good against the Tactical Marines, but we should eventually see a shotgun purchase. Assault Marines, it's often been a debate, but I've always personally believed that the knockback effect of the Assault Marine landing is superior to the suppression effect of the Raptor landing. And that's also something that, to some extent, it is debatable, and there are some people who disagree, and I think you could also argue that there are different purposes or different situations where one is better than the other. Nice Doombolts there, pretty much catching the entire Space Marine blob, and that is something that could really help Inekura win this engagement right here. He's also consumed a Heretic to get another barrage of Doombolts. Misses it entirely, but Tactical Marines are already forced off, and that's a big win here for Inekura. That being said, Assault Marines are out here on the field. Nice jump. That jump animation prevents the Raptors from ever getting knocked back, and they put some pressure on the Scouts, force one off, and manage to retreat. So nice reactions and decisions by Inekura there. Eventually, though, the Raptors, they will still lose this fight, and I think they just want to retreat before they lose a model, and it's too late. I think if they had retreated just a little bit earlier, they might not have lost one of their models there. So, Aspiring Champion on the Heretics, definitely put in here in part as a way to assist in dealing with the Assault Marines. The Aspiring Champion Heretics do want to counter-initiate against the Assault Marines when they jump in. Ideally, they don't want to get jumped on themselves so that they don't get disrupted. Force Commander also in here with a Power Sword, looking to get some melee specials. And this is going to be a one fight, though, for Inekura. Kind of overwhelming, killing a bunch of models on the Assault Marines as well. And by a bunch, I mean one. One exactly is a bunch now. So one fight, certainly a lot of pressure that does come out from these Heretics, especially if there are no shotguns to answer them. And I think at this point, I think between Raptors and double Heretics with Aspiring Champions, I think Moomin is a little bit late on getting shotguns, and I think although the Power Sword can certainly do a lot of damage to the Raptors, I think getting the Power Sword instead of a shotgun on one of these scout squads may have been a mistake. I don't think he's paid for it too hard, at least not yet, though. Like, if there was a generator bash to follow up that one engagement, that could have been a big problem. I still think inevitably we need to see shotguns on at least one of these scout squads, if not both of them at this point. Because even going for the shotguns, although it's definitely... Even going for 2 shotguns, even though that might be a little bit more power expenditure than you might always want in Tier 1, you're up against a Chaos player who went for double Aspiring Champion, and that's more expensive than double shotguns. Not only that, but your Chaos player also went Raptors. So that's also a little bit more expensive than Chaos players are usually looking to spend on their Tier 1.5 unit, since I personally feel that Raptors are more situational than, say, like a Havoc. Arguably the Noise Marines, but the Noise Marines would also be cheaper than the Raptors. Raptors are definitely getting some value, though. But again, I also feel that part of that is that I think Moomin is letting these Raptors get a little too much value with no shotguns. And unfortunately for Moomin, even if he does decide to get shotguns now, he's going to be at a tech disadvantage. This is actually starting to look like we have full power farms up for both players. But the map is blue in favor of Inekura, and he has a tech lead. This is actually now starting to look pretty scary for Moomin. This could be a Blood Crusher pretty soon after upgrading to Tier 2. And he should actually, by the time he gets to Tier 2, he should have enough to start a Blood Crusher. Probably even a little bit more. Moomin is only just going to be starting Tier 2 now if he presses the button immediately, except for the fact that he lost Assault Marines! No, he didn't. Or does he? It's so close. Oh my god. For a second there, I thought he lost the Assault Marine squad, but there was like one hidden model there. Even without losing the entire squad, he's losing so many models. He gets to Tier 2. Oh my god, unfortunately, yeah, Moomin is actually just losing these fights way too hard. Yeah, he's losing these fights way too hard. He's bleeding too much. This should just be... I think he already started a Blood Crusher behind this Tier 2 upgrade. And then this Blood Crusher just walks over to the power farm. Destroys it. No, he doesn't even wait for that to happen. But there was the Blood Crusher. That is game number 4 going in favor of Inekura. And going quite quickly. So that does bring us to a 5th and final game. Game number 5 will take place on Fedrid Folly. This time, Inekura will be playing as the Warp Spider Exarch, teleporting ranged commander, good at harassment and map control, and Moomin will be switching over to the Warlock. This is a melee commander, can become a spellcaster, or a melee tank. So then, going into this final game, I do gotta say, I think I'm a little bit concerned for Moomin. I think it's pretty clear from the rest of his hero pool and how the rest of this series has played out that Space Marine is his main. He's already gone through all of his Space Marine heroes, though. I think his best chance for winning this series probably would have been to close it out on Game 4 while he was still playing as the Force Commander. And now he's got himself here an Eldar mirror. Inekura, I know, plays Eldar a bit. Haven't seen any of it from Moomin just yet. In fact, this is the first time, since this is the first time I'm really watching Moomin at all, it's also the first time that I'm watching his Eldar play. And all of his wins in this series so far have been with Space Marines. So let's see what he can do. Maybe he's a secret Eldar god and I just don't know about it. Maybe he is the reincarnation of Cain himself. But he's going to have to prove it. So Dire Avengers moving up for Inekura, now moving back, focusing down this Warlock. Warlock is already really low walking into this fight and eventually does just need to retreat out of there, not achieving anything and getting kind of close to going down. So that's something where I'm concerned that maybe Moomin, not completely proficient on that hero, putting that Warlock having that Warlock going in a situation where he just clearly wasn't going to get any value. Dire Avengers trying to go back in. They are engaging 2-on-1 against, or rather Guardians, against an opposing Guardian squad. Still getting used to the fact that we no longer have Dire Avengers after 7 years of having them. So right now it's pretty much mirror builds out of both players, and of course it is going to be the Rangers out of both players. The Rangers, I think it's something that is kind of a dreaded part of this matchup, particularly in retail where Rangers do a lot more burst damage and are actually just going to one-shot models quite easily. Here, they don't one-shot models quite as much. In fact, generally speaking, they don't. However, Rangers can still be oppressive in their own way. They've got very, very long range, 65 units. So that is... And one of the things that is true about Eldar is that they do not have a tier 1 jump unit. I guess technically you could say the Warp Spider Exarch, he would count, but he is only available to Inekura. Meanwhile, this Warlock trying to get into melee right here, but there's a lot of range damage that could potentially focus him down. He's getting so close, I feel like, in some cases, to overstaying his welcome. He may actually have done it now with the Warp Spider Exarch also killing him in retreat. So indeed, Moomin, it hasn't been too far into this game, but I think most times it feels like Moomin is not entirely sure what to do with this Warlock, and I'm not entirely sure what he should do. He's getting focused down so much by range fire. Now we also have a game of chicken between two squads of Howling Banshees, but one of them did get knocked down by a special attack. So when you have two squads of Howling Banshees that just kind of engage each other head-to-head, it ends up being a little bit of a game of chicken. We also have to consider that one squad of Howling Banshees did have an aspect, the other one did not. So the one that did have an aspect does have a bit more health. It's also going to turn into a double Ranger battle. Again, I mean, it's like if your opponent gets Rangers, what can you do other than get your own Rangers? And it seems like both players are quite well aware of this. Because if you don't get Rangers, then you're pretty much at the mercy of your opponent's Rangers, and you're just going to slowly take a lot of damage through attrition. I think I can kind of theorize maybe an alternative where maybe if you're playing as the Farseer with a double Howling Banshee build, maybe you can really just like charge in and be super aggressive, but even then that has the potential to get shut down by kinetic pulses and grenades. So I wouldn't feel confident in it, but I'm just trying to think of something other than your own double Rangers that you could possibly do. Howling Banshee is getting super low, though, just taking so many shots from the Rangers. Rangers on Inekura's side also plinking away at the Guardians. So Moomin's Guardians also getting super low here. But it seems like Inekura is the one who's kind of coming out on top of this. Warp Spider Exarch will capture that victory point, and then he'll just teleport away. Oh, teleports into the garrison. Actually so smart. I thought he was going to teleport across the cliff where the Banshees couldn't reach him. But teleporting into the garrison also makes it so that the Banshees can't capture the point. Otherwise, they will just bleed a ton of models in the process. Yeah, they were already about 80% of their hit points, probably would lose at least 2 models before even getting a decap if they tried to stay to decap that point. Instead, they'll just look elsewhere, and that's also another big advantage of the Warp Spider Exarch on this map, being able to teleport between across that cliff to control that victory point. Grenade goes in to try to slow down the Howling Banshees, and now these are Moomin's Howling Banshees. They're going in for these Rangers, trying to get as much damage as they can. They're chasing after, but they're going to go into another squad of Howling Banshees. Oh no. They've already chased past the other Howling Banshees. This Howling Banshee squad is gone. Like, they can't retreat. It's only down to one model. They're gone 100%. That's a huge loss. And in fact, it's such a huge loss that Moomin throws in the towel, and that is the end of the game there. And it did feel like Inekura really just knew his way around the Eldar mirror better, and I think also the Warp Spider Exarch was definitely working out better, in particular for this map control aspect. But that is it. That is 3-2 in favor of Inekura in this series. Hope you enjoyed it, and have a good night.